Haven't done one of these in a while. This is part of the Joint House inquiry. Tim Roemer is actually interviewing Tom Wilshire, who's hidden behind a partition. He was the deputy chief of Alex Station. Bob Beers from the Immigration Naturalization Service, and Michael Rolnies, FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. Let's see what they have to say.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by thanking you, too, for your expert sense of fairness and balance in conducting these hearings. I just want to say that I think it is critical from a perspective of the jurisdiction of this committee for us to do our work. Much of it will take place in private, but some of it should take place in public. And you have held off on the public settings to get the right balance, to make sure that delicate information is protected and that sources and methods are protected. And I think you've done an expert job on that front. I hope we continue to have that balance and to have public hearings so that the American people can get the information so that they can feel more comfortable with access. So thank you again.
Tim Roemer, by the way, is the only congressman to serve on both the Joint House and the 9/11 Commission. But needless to say, those are nice words by Roemer, but we didn't get all the information, and neither did the Joint House, and neither did the 9/11 Commission. These are incomplete reports and incomplete congressional inquiries that didn't have all the information at their disposal. Obviously, now, when you look back on this, what is this, 2002? This is 21 years almost upcoming. So, yeah.
For your balance in this. Mr. Kojam, I come back to one of the most disturbing things that I've heard today, and there have been a litany of some disturbing things, but one of the most disturbing for me is the fact that a couple years ago, you could be in America, you could be on a watch list, you could apply for a visa extension and get it. Is that true?
Congressman, I'm going to ask my colleague Richard Beer from Consular Affairs to help you with that question.
Again, to make the distinction, this application from someone already in the United States to extend their stay is adjudicated by the Immigration Service.
Is it true? I only have about 4 minutes. Is it true that you could do that?
Yes.
Prior to September 11th?
Yes.
So
shouldn't be really surprising. Now, why am I saying that? Because in 1990, a known terrorist who was on a watch list was even a bigger name than anybody involved with the 9/11 attacks and the hijackings, was Omar Abdel Rahman, who was the co-leader of an Egyptian radical fundamentalist sect called Gamma Islamiyah, who have been responsible for terrorist attacks like the Luxor massacre in '97 and their alleged involvement in the assassination of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat in 1980. They've also been involved in the attempted assassination of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak in Ethiopia. So Rahman, who was on a terrorist watch list, actually applied at a U.S. visa in Cairo, Egypt, and was approved not once, not twice, but 3 to 5 times. His application was approved. However, there's a catch to this. There were CIA agents who were acting like U.S. Embassy employees who facilitated these applications and approved of them. That's right. The CIA actually was at the Cairo University Embassy in Cairo, and they played the part of U.S. Embassy employees and approved of a known terrorist to get into the country of the United States. Now, question is, why, right? Well, later on in a New York Times report that same year of 1990, they asked why the CIA did this. They said, we had no idea he was on the watch list. Sure. Now, when we talk about terrorist watch list, and this is coming from the ACLU report about U.S. government watch listing, the unfair processes and devastating consequences of it, which was posted on March of 2014. Now, Roemer asked if this is true. Now, they reformatted. In 2003, President Bush directed the government consolidate its approach to screening known or suspected terrorists, which eventually resulted in the creation of bloated watch listing systems that contained the identities of significant number of people who were neither known or just appropriately suspected of being terrorists. So instead, before, when there was hardly anyone on the watch list, after the 9/11 attacks, everybody was on the watch list. Everybody, even people that didn't deserve to be on the watch list. You have a selectees list, which is maintained by the FBI's terrorist screening center, which is the subset of the terrorist screening database under the FBI. This selectees list are people who are identified by the FBI as suspected to be terrorists or families and friends linked to the actual terrorist. You also have the consular lookout and support system, which is called CLASS in short. This is maintained by the State Department to identify individuals who may be ineligible for a visa or a passport, who are linked with terrorists or terrorism or involved in a country that's involved with facilitating terrorism. You also have the known or appropriately suspected terrorist file, which is a subset of the terrorist screening database of the FBI. This is maintained by the Terrorist Screening Center at the FBI for dissemination nationwide to federal, state, and local law enforcement through the National Crime Information Center database, in which it has people who are suspected of being terrorists themselves. So now we have all these lists and all these databases and centers regarding people who are suspected of being terrorists. But are they really? Are they actually terrorists? Well, that's the question. A lot of these people, like I said, don't belong on the terrorist watch list themselves.
You could be on a terrorist watch list. You could simply apply for extension, receive the extension, and stay in the United States for whatever your visa extension was permitted.
Yes, essentially, yes.
Has that been corrected?
That I'm not prepared to answer. I don't know what the Immigration Service is doing now in terms of checking watch lists. I believe that's been changed.
A year and a few weeks after September 11th, we still cannot answer the question of whether or not that deficiency has been addressed?
I can't answer it. The Immigration
Anybody in the
Service
room
would have to
answer that question? Well, I would hope we would get an answer to that question very quickly, and more so than an answer to the question, a way to solve the problem.
Well, immediately after the congressional inquiries, this problem was approached with high degree of importance. And like I said, the FBI, the State Department, local, federal, and law enforcement agencies all stepped up. And I've said it before in other videos, we have walls for things like this. So in other words, we had a wall between the local police department and the FBI in regards to sharing information about citizens, information. After the 9/11 attacks, all these walls, all of them, through these, like I said, the federal and local and city institutions now don't have these walls. They all act as a unit now, a singular unit, because they use that as the problem regarding to why the 9/11 attacks were successful, because a lot of these local and state and federal agencies weren't willing to share information. That wasn't really the problem. The real problem was you had information regarding these terrorists who were involved with 9/11 attacks, but they didn't act on it, right? And then they used that point and say, oh, we just didn't get the information because we have these walls. Well, those walls were to protect us from information, from our privacy, our information, which you needed a warrant to get, but now you don't. The NSA, the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the police departments of the local, provincial provinces, the cities, towns, now it's all shared and it's without any walls or any protection.
So that one of the places for a terrorist to be safe is not the United States of America. I want to ask our dedicated people here from the FBI and the CIA, thank you again for coming today. To the CIA officer, I want to ask, I've had concern about not enough emphasis on analysts. You and your good work at the CIA put some clues together, I understand, in May of 2001, after this situation had been missed for a while. You started a ball rolling. It's my understanding that with the clues finally put together in May of 2001, that was turned over to an analyst who then put it together by August of 2001. Is that correct?
Not entirely. There is a small team probably working this as separate people. There is an analyst. There is also an FBI analyst detailed to CTC who is working on this.
So there was an analyst from CIA and an analyst from FBI?
Within CTC, and then they were working with their colleagues
and my question
FBI.
would be, sir, how many analysts did we have working this in CIA altogether? The total number of analysts in CTC in May of 2001?
I don't have an answer for that. I was at the FBI at the time.
How many were in the FBI?
I would say roughly, what you, again, as I said before in my statement, what you don't have is a large team working a single problem. Here you have people who are working multiple problems
my question,
coming together periodically to look at this.
I understand. My question, though, is how many analysts are working UBL in CIA and how many analysts are working UBL in FBI? It is my understanding from a previous hearing that there was one analyst in FBI working UBL full-time. Is that correct?
If I can take that, Senator, that is not correct.
That's not, how many were there?
Going back to the fall of 1999, when a decision was made to create the Counterterrorism Division separate from the old National Security Division, there was also a decision taken to create an Information Resources Division. It was not necessarily popular, but the theory held that if you want to do strategic intelligence, we need to have the majority, if not all, of the analysts in the FBI in one division. I understand that an analyst within that division was working strategic intelligence. In the immediate aftermath of the Africa bombings, we created a Bin Laden unit, and it is within that unit, the only unit at headquarters that's responsible for one group and one group only, that initially 4, in addition with several investigative operational specialists, work with the agent supervisors and the unit chief in the UBL. Could we use more? I think I've made that case, and we certainly could, and we would certainly hope for your support on that.
I know my time has expired, and the senator from California has waited patiently for her turn. But, Mr. Chairman, I would hope, since we've had a host of different answers to this question over the last several days, that for the record we could get with certainty how many full-time analysts were working the UBL situation for the FBI, how many for the CTC within CIA.
Well, all right. It's approximately, well, the CTC also had a unit called the Bin Laden Issue Station, which was codenamed Malik Station. Originally, it was up to 30, I believe, 30 analysts working there. With the FBI, the Bin Laden unit that was created in 1998, it was maybe the most 8 or 9. Wasn't many for the FBI. And you would think that New York division, especially, would have a more consolidated, bigger unit for Arab fundamentalists, seeing that they were a prior victim of the 1993 World Trade Center attacks. But the FBI basically under James Fox, who was the director back then, said this was the work of a lone nut job, and we got everybody. And this is even after the arrests of the Landmarks plot, which was a follow-up to the 9/3 bombing. I mean, even a freaking fireman, Ronald Bucca, basically saw the writing on the wall and said, yeah, we have a bigger problem than we realize. Very few FBI agents were also wary of the superiors at the New York division who didn't take it seriously. People like Frank Pellegrino, John Anticev. These guys basically, tried their best. And later on, after the embassy bombings, you have the agents like Steve Bongard, Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, Jack Clunan. These guys that basically really tried to, get as much information as they can regarding Bin Laden and the group, that started in Sudan, which ultimately became Al Qaeda in Afghanistan in '96 when he relocated. And even after the fatwas, nobody took them seriously until, a year and a half later when the embassies were bombed. The Khobar Towers bombing also, which was blamed on Hezbollah and Iran. Meanwhile, the Saudi government and, of course, even some officials under the Clinton administration basically said, no, this was an Al Qaeda styled attack. Hezbollah, basically there was no real evidence to suggest that they were. So yeah, look, how many people working at these units? I mean, we probably won't know. I mean, a lot of these units are classified for good reason. They're classified, but under a congressional setting, I bet you that answer was answered in a closed door session.
And how that had changed over this critical 3-year period. And I thank the chairman.
I would just like to add to that it's also critical that we understand what we mean by analysts, because there are a lot of different functions these people perform depending on where they work. So some people are analysts working in operational capacity. Some people are analysts who write memos for the president. Some people are supporting operations. They're performing an analytic function, but it's different. So it is a very difficult question to answer in general. And there are a lot of other people working on the Bin Laden issue who are not analysts, who perform a similar function in terms of operational guidance and targeting and that kind of thing. So it is a hard question to answer directly.
Congressman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I did want to respond to Congressman Roemer's previous question. I have at least a partial answer, and that is that every name in the tip-off database and every new name that is put into the database is run against records of visa holders, both current and expired. And if any name is a match, we do initiate a revocation process. So if it's in our database and they're a visa holder, and we believe they're here, we do pass that information on to domestic law enforcement.
It's passed.
Yeah, and so look, I mean, Roemer was trying to basically find out how many dedicated people were involved with the FBI and the CIA's Counterterrorism Center in regards to that operation, a singular operation on Bin Laden and Al Qaeda. Now, I mean, it's public, but do we really know the numbers? I would happen to think that they had just enough. The FBI didn't have enough. The CIA certainly did have enough, and you also had the Defense Intelligence Agency's own operation, which was the operation that was led by General Hugh Shelton and Anthony Schaefer, and of course Eric Kleinsmith, regarding data mining collection that was basically headed under the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, and as well as the elite corps of Army specialists from the Land Information Warfare's Activity Division, codenamed Able Danger. And this all started in '96. Now, Able Danger started in '96. The Bin Laden issue station of the CIA started in '96 under CTC David Cohen. And in 1999, you had the FBI creating their own Bin Laden unit. Now, in regards to sharing information, well, you would think everybody, like when I interviewed Anthony Schaefer, he basically told me that he was naive to think at that time, in 1996, 97, that everybody was working on the same page to basically collect information, help the United States capture or kill Osama bin Laden. But he found out in very short time that nobody was on the same page. And this was a problem. In fact, when Anthony Schaefer agreed to meet with members of the Bin Laden issue station at CIA, they basically told Schaefer and members of the Able Danger team that they weren't going to help them because they were a threat, a direct threat to stealing their thunder, stealing their lead as the lead agency in regards to information about Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. As for, a terrorist on a watch list regarding getting a U.S. visa, yeah, this is regretfully the case. Now it's no longer the case. But it took 9/11 for that to happen. And it didn't have to happen that way either. So, all right, that's about it for this video. And I'll see you in the next one.